Talk about low-budget flights. No food or movies? I'm out of here. I like running better. Welcome back, YouTube viewers, to another video. So, we finally reached it. You guys managed to get me to my 100 subscriber goal before June 11th. June 9th, actually. I'm very proud of being able to make it this far. When I started this, I did not think I could make it to 100 subscribers this soon. I'm very grateful for all of your support. And just one quick question. Do any of you guys know why my videos sometimes go down in views? It doesn't really make sense, and I know you might not be interested, but could you check out my video I did on Hiccup from How to Train Your Dragon? I'd really appreciate that. I was really proud of that video, and it's done pretty poorly considering how I thought it would do a lot better. But anyway, we've reached it. My 100 subscriber special. My review of the greatest Sonic story of all time, probably. So for a bit of background, this or Enerjack Reborn, which is Sonic the Hedgehog 181 to 184 from Archie, these two are the first Sonic comics I ever read. I don't remember which one I read first, but I think it was the Silver Saga. I enjoy this. Well, it's kind of hard to say which one's better, but I'm just going to say this one's better for the sake of this video. As the title says, the best Sonic story ever. Probably. I love this story a lot. It's really, really great for multiple reasons, and I'm going to get into it. So without further ado, let's do it to it! First, we have to start off with the main character himself, Silver the Hedgehog. My third favorite Sonic character. I love Silver. And this comic definitely solidifies it for me. I mean, before I read this comic, I hardly knew any Sonic characters, even the ones from the games, because really my first introduction to Sonic was the Sonic Boom cartoon. All I knew were Sonic Tails, Knuckles, Amy, Styx, Eggman, Orbot, and Cubot, and Shadow too. I guess Metal Sonic, and I hadn't seen the Vector episode, so if I did read this first, then Silver was the first other game character I saw, and this is a great first impression for the character. Archie is easily the best version of Silver. It's not even close. And this story I'd say is his best showing. While it doesn't have my all-time favorite Silver moment, that would be in a different issue. It definitely has his best showing overall when it comes to a story. As he really grows as a person here, as Silver is from a post-apocalyptic future. We all know that. It's horrible. And he knows that 200 years ago, a traitor amongst the freedom fighters, original freedom fighters, caused this to happen. He doesn't know who or what happened exactly, but he just knows something around that happened. And here, he travels to another dystopian future, which actually takes place before his, but in an alternate timeline. This alternate timeline is, well, we'll get into that later. So what really works for Silver's character here is that we get to see him reacting to other people who have a horrible dystopian world to deal with. And because of him, he's able to help them push through and see things to the end. Because when he comes here, they finally feel like giving up, at least some of them anyway. And Silver is able to push through. He's also just really fun. He gets a lot of great one-liners. Love his expressions for Tracy Yardley's incredible artwork, of course. And he's also portrayed here as not dumb. While I do say I like IDW Silver, that is not... I like him more so for the fact that I can even say IDW has a good character. He's not even close here in that compared to how he is here or in the games. Here he's not portrayed, he's still got his little, not gullible, but not naivete, we all know that. He still portrays optimistic, he's loyal, he's determined, he doesn't give up. But he's also still portrayed as young and brash, and he has to learn from his mistakes. He really gets to grow as a person more than, well, really any other character in the comic, now that I think about it. The only one that could maybe match is Shadow, or, I don't know, Knuckles, maybe? I don't know. Silver, despite not being in it that much, gets so much character development, which really shows just how much effort was put into writing him. Like this scene right here, on the left, where this universe's version of Rotor, or Dagger, or whatever he's called here, saying about bringing back all the people who Enerjack enslaved. I don't know, should we even bring them back to a world like this? Don't even think that! All I'm saying is that this world is a mess. So is mine, but that doesn't mean you have to stop fighting for everyone. You may not realize it, but you're lucky. You know what the problem is, and you have a way to solve it. I don't! Great Silver impression, if I do say so myself. Chapter 2, Enerjack. This was the first Sonic villain I ever saw outside of Eggman. Well, and because, yeah, if I did read Enerjack Reborn first, and this would be the second one either way, Enerjack here is truly something special. I don't think there's ever been a Sonic villain, not even Robo Robotnik in this comic, did as much as Enerjack here. He is practically unstoppable. If you've seen Saiyan Scholar's video, Dark Enerjack, the power no one can beat, or this, I don't know who posted it, but there's some video called Archie Sonic Power Scaling Update. It goes over how by the end, the most powerful character in the entire Archie Sonic multiverse is Dark Enerjack. And he's just such a menacing, intimidating villain. He pulls no punches. He is menacing, gets things done. And as we find out, the only reason that this version of the Freedom Fighters is even still here is because he just wanted something to do. And guys, we all know how powerful Archie Sonic is. Even if you don't really read Archie Sonic, you know that. And Archie Super Sonic is even more powerful. And he just says one time, "You fool, I triumphed over Super Sonic." And it seems he also triumphed over Shadow, and if he beats, and who's not to say he didn't fight Super Shadow? He probably did, and I'd say he definitely won that fight. But I also just want to turn my attention to this one panel on the left. I remember reading this whenever for years, and I was just wondering. Well, first few times I read it anyway. What does this mean when Silver says, "All I have are some vague reports of a traitor from 200 years ago, but I still try." And Enerjack just stands there contemplating it, and then he asks Janica, "What's going on?" She says, "Sometimes he just broods like that and leaves us for a few days." Because when I first read this, I did not know who Dark Enerjack actually was. So we know, I learned obviously because it says so, that Janica is actually Lara Sue, and that Silver time traveled and met her in the main timeline of the comic. And since Enerjack is her father, that means that this is Knuckles. That blew my mind when I finally realized it rereading this. Well, it was probably the fourth time I'd read this, but which is when I finally realized that, yeah, this is Knuckles. And that plays more into something I'll get into a little bit later, but just that blew my mind. I also always just like this image because it also tells you that despite the fact that he's gone so mad with power, and now that he's Dark Enerjack and has been for years and years, this implies that even though, say, yeah, Janica and all these people, like this version of Bunny, Fiona Fox, Bean, Bark, they don't know who Silver is. But Dark Enerjack, who is Knuckles, he does. At least he vaguely remembers this, because it's just the reason he's even thinking about what Silver says to begin with. It makes me wonder, what did Silver travel to meet Knuckles in this timeline? I want to know. That'd be an interesting story. Oh, and yeah, he's just insanely powerful. Like his epic fight with Silver, where he chucks Silver at an island, and then Silver does the same thing. His defeat is also pretty well earned. He gets an epic showdown, and he doesn't feel like he's just too unceremoniously beaten, because even though he is almost invincible, he still is beaten, and it doesn't feel like he's being nerfed or anything like that. I also have to mention Janica, or Lara Sue, or whatever you want to call her. So the fact that this story was even written is something special, alright? Because I guess this kind of plays into the continuity, so I don't really want to mention that until later, but as for her character here specifically, she's good, I'd say. I like how when her group of freedom fighters doesn't trust Silver, after he gives them his crazy story about being a time traveler and being from an alternate timeline or universe or whatever, they all laugh at him or think he's crazy, but Janica just says, "No, I believe him." Which again makes me wonder, how does this work? Because Silver would only know Knuckles and Lara Sue, who's also Janica, when in the 30 years later comic where he time traveled to help Sonic. But that would imply that that story happened in some form here, because how else would she even know who he is? But she also doesn't really know who he is. She just says, "No, I believe him," which makes you wonder maybe she just believes in time travel, or I don't know. There's a lot to unpack here. I don't know how to get into it. Then there's Silver's Masters. Once again, I didn't really know anything about this comic, and it took me years later until I actually started reading a bunch of it, picking apart the lore and stuff like that, to where I understood certain things. I knew Mammoth Mogul was a villain because of some other stuff I'd read a little bit later, which is also, since he's immortal, it's why he's able to remember an original freedom fighter betrayed the world 200 years ago. He doesn't know who it is because it was too long ago, so he can't remember, but he knows, which is also how he's able to help Silver. And he's also interesting here because, yeah, Mammoth Mogul was a villain, but eventually he decided, after being beaten, even after gaining super ultra cosmic power multiple times, he decided to just sit around, send mercenaries after Sonic occasionally, and then just do nothing pretty much while running his casino. But as he says here, he learned the error of his ways, not just in sitting around doing nothing, but also even being a villain to begin with. He didn't achieve anything. All he did was make things worse. As for Edmund, who is pretty much just Yoda, I guess, or Oogway maybe, I don't know. It was definitely very shocking when I realized that this guy is Knuckles' grandson. Because I don't even think this is in the 30 years later comic. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. It's been a while since I read it, but it says in the Sonic Comic Encyclopedia, yes, time for a nerd rant, that Argyle, Vector's son, Lars-Su, obviously Knuckles' daughter, had a thing for each other. Okay, so I guess that means I got married eventually because Edmund, when he sees the prelate of Vector, I don't know who this is, but he reminds me of my papa for some reason. Meaning that, yeah, this is Knuckles' grandson. Edmund is Knuckles' grandson, and he's named after the original Edmund, who was, Dimitri's brother and the start of all that whole lore mess. I love that this was done. Because one is also that he's the last of the Guardians too. And he has so much history that we don't even know about, especially since he says, "I'm over 100 years old. I'm bound to forget something." Makes you wonder what he has gone through. And he's able to teach Silver all of this, because as Silver realizes from both of his masters, after he continuously tries to fight Enerjak, he just decides to toss him at islands just like he did. Hit him with his cosmic powers non-stop. But as he remembers what Mammoth Mogul told him, because remember, Enerjak is a near invincible being. Your power is as limitless as your imagination. Apprentice, think, and from there you will act. Energy is what moves all matter. It is yours to guide and manipulate. As my parents and grandparents told me, raw power will only get you so far. Fight first on the battlefield of the mind. There is nothing that can match the power of chaos energy, except for more chaos energy. Remember my words on power and restraint. And potential. Ultimate power ultimately corrupts. Be careful, boy. Use your head, and I don't just mean for making all that glowing nonsense. Silver realizes that, yes, he must use his head, and not just for all that glowing nonsense. Because, yeah, Enerjak is super, super powerful. No matter how strong Silver is, I mean, he one time held Super Scourge down for a few seconds somehow. He can still not beat Dark Enerjak. So he just decides to hit him with all his attacks, reflect them. Because the only person who could even stand a chance against Dark Enerjak is himself. I mean, Silver did scuff his helmet, but that was pretty rude. And this is also what helps Silver grow. He realizes that brawn does not always beat brain. Because the battlefield of the mind is incredibly important. Because remember, raw power will only get you so far. And potential and restraint are incredibly important because ultimate power ultimately corrupts, just like it did for Enerjak. Then I have to get into the art. Okay, so this was the first Sonic Universe story that Jason Jensen didn't color because he left the comic. I really wish he didn't, but then again, I think the colors here might actually look better the way they are here because they're darker, and when you combine it with Tracy Yardley's pencils and Jim Amash's inks, all of this just looks incredible. And with the whole battle, the epic battle between Enerjack and Silver, this whole page with all the prelates of, let's see, name all the characters. You got Shadow, of course, Sally, Sergeant Simeon, Bunny, Amy. Is that one of the Down Under Freedom Fighters, Walt Wallaby? One of the 40 Fathoms Freedom Fighters. I never noticed that before. Same thing with the Down Under Freedom Fighter. I think one of the Wolfpack, Monkey Khan, Espio, Vector, Dr. Fanitovis, Tails, Rouge, Jet, Dulcie, and Charmy, and Saffron. Okay, wow, that's quite a lot of characters. I didn't even look at each individual character here until now. And the art just really sells the scope of all of this. Look when Enerjack raises up an entire building and says, "My dear child, I've always known where you were." Yeah, and just look at all the paneling here too. It's all really impressive. The artwork here is superb, man. It gives everything this huge, epic, end of the world, climactic blockbuster movie battle. And even though it has a bunch of gray, it's still colorful enough to pop, and it actually looks. You can actually tell what's happening, unlike other blockbuster movies. Those pale in comparison to this comic. And then I want to finally get into the continuity. I already mentioned the thing about the Enerjack contemplating Silver's words, and well, obviously this whole thing about Lara Sue saying, "No, I believe him," after Silver talks about his whole time travel thing about meeting a different Janica and helped her save Angel Island from a monster. I don't. Oh boy, this is something else. The amount of. Because remember, so in the 25 years. Well, no. Oh, even before that. During the Knuckles comic, B stories, there was a random part during the Chaos Knuckles saga where Lara Sue, making her first appearance, just shows up. She doesn't use her real name. She just says she's Janica. But we get little moments like her looking at Knuckles' mother and saying, "Oh my gosh, it's Grandma!" And we hear that Remington is gonna shoot Knuckles, which is her father. Wondering, wait a minute, if she's still alive, how does she exist? How does Knuckles have a daughter if he died before he was married to Julie Sue? So then in the end, we see her travel back to her time, which is actually an alternate timeline where she meets Julie Sue, who's now grown up and her mother. And she says that, "No, you see, your dad didn't die like I told you. He just became an evil, chaos-powered demigod, and we have to stop him." And it says, "Write in if you want to see how this story concludes." Of course nobody wrote in, because this was so confusing and made no sense and pointless to the overall story. Just leave it to Ian Flynn in about 9 years, and he wrapped this whole thing up. Because this expands on that, and super chaos powered Knuckles just turned into Dark Enerjack. And this is that same Lara Sue, because remember, in that story she called herself Janica, so people wouldn't hear her real name. And that's what she's called here. This is the same character from those random B stories from 9 years before this was published. That's something else. I just like how this ties into and completes a plot that was so vague and undefined and really unimportant, and gives it this epic conclusion that I really didn't deserve. But hey, leave it to this era of Archie Sonic to give random plots that nobody remembers actual conclusions. Well, as for my conclusion, thank you all for my 100 subscribers. I can't wait to make more videos and continue this channel. I'm very proud of these past 2 months about. Well, it's June now. I hope you all enjoyed this, and comment down below. Do you think this is the best Sonic story ever? And remember, I said probably. What's your favorite specifically? How would you rate this comic? That's all for now, and as always, keep on juicing!